I bet that if you're like most people, when you hear the name Cronenberg, you probably think of David, right? The Fly, Videodrome, Crimes of the Future. I mean, why wouldn't you? I'm here today to tell you why you should maybe add Brandon to that list of Cronenbergs. Brandon Cronenberg, son of David, is a second-generation filmmaker coming off of his last project in 2019, Possessor, has a new film releasing in the theaters now. That film is Infinity Pool, starring Mia Goth and Alexander Skarsgård in the leading roles. This new film is a bit of a cautionary tale, but don't worry, it'll definitely satisfy even the craziest of horror freaks out there. To put it lightly, this film is overly violent, blatantly sexual, and has a narrative and an ending that's so depressing that it would make even the happiest people upset. To tell you the truth, I loved it. I thought it was great. The entire film takes place on a country of Latoka, which from what I understand is an island with a couple of very, very high-end resorts, mostly suited for people with a lot of money. Because of the setting, the cinematography is phenomenal, really. A lot of times you have the classic Cronenberg shots of very, very close-up angles of maybe a person's face or what they're eating or what they're doing, whereas other times you have the very, very long shots, extreme long shots of the landscapes and the mountains and the water and the beaches and so on. It makes it so that every point that you watch is worth your attention. And speaking of worth your attention, Mia Goth and Alexander Skarsgård absolutely carry this film. Mia Goth is on another level. I don't know if it's quite as entertaining as she was in Pearl, but I'd say it's a close second at the very, very least. Skarsgård's character James and his wife Em are on vacation at this resort where they meet Gabby and Albin, another couple vacationing at this resort, as they mentioned they do every year. The day after they meet, they decide to leave the resort and go to a local beach. The catch is, visitors aren't allowed to leave the resort, so they're already breaking rules right off the bat. This is probably within the first 15, maybe 20 minutes of the movie. On the way home, everyone's had a little bit to drink and a little too much to eat, so they're all feeling a little woozy. James offers to drive, and on the way back to the resort, runs over a local farmer, killing him on the spot. Bad, I know, but it gets worse. This is where the plot of the film kinda gets a little wonky and non-linear almost. After they're arrested, Gabby and Albin, the government gets a hold of James and says that his punishment is execution. Now, for a considerable sum of money, they offer an option to tourists in which the tourist is cloned. The government makes a perfect duplicate of the person being charged with execution, and instead of the person. This leads James down a very long and windy road of sex, violence, elitism, impulse, temptations, more violence, pain, murder, and a little more violence. Luckily for his wife Em, she leaves and goes home. Good for her. We never see her again, and I hope we never have to. Because you know what? After you watch this movie, you understand she got out of a very, very bad situation. A lot of the appeal of this movie comes from after the fact, after you watch it. You start to realize the kind of themes and motifs that Brandon Cronenberg has implemented into this script. My personal favorite is a sort of Hellraiser-esque commodification of pain and murder. I don't want to get too much more into the plot than I already have in case you do want to see it. I think a lot of the appeal of this movie is not knowing what it's about, similarly to how me and my dad went into this theater, literally not knowing anything other than the fact it was a Cronenberg horror movie. But there are other themes as well, such as entitlement of the rich in first world countries, glorification of violence without repercussions. There are points in the film where it's shown that the Latokan government makes more clones of James and his friends. They sort of have this sense of elitism, that they can do whatever they want as long as they have the money to pay off the government. It creates an addictive personality for them, an addiction to violence and being better than everybody else. I'm really not going to sit here and pretend to 100% understand all of the themes that Cronenberg tried to fit into this movie, and most of them successfully, I may add. Instead of doing that, I guess all I have left to do is explain to you why Brandon needs to be on your list of Cronenbergs to watch. Now, if you've seen most of David's movies, you understand that gore and body horror is a central foundational topic. I think it might be in the gene pool of the family, because Brandon's got that in droves. To be totally transparent, I have not seen his feature film Antiviral. However, I have seen Possessor, and Possessor was disgusting, at least when you could actually figure out what was going on. It's a very complex plot, requires a lot of thought, but once you do think about it, it's fantastic. Similarly, in Infinity Pool, once James goes down the rabbit hole of cloning and violence, he's exposed by his friends to new ways of violence, new ways of sexual exploration, and overall just ways to experience that next rush of adrenaline, like breaking into a general's home, lining them all up execution style and holding a gun to their head. Now, there's many points in the movie where it's very clear that James doesn't want to pull that trigger, legitimately, metaphorically, or otherwise. There's times where he does pull the trigger. But the real crux of this story is James attempting to hold on to whatever's left of his humanity, even though he sees that humanity cloned and shifted in front of his eyes numerous times. The script, while a very great way to build up characters of Gabby, Mia Goth, and James, Alexander Skarsgård, does require a lot of suspension of disbelief at times, and if you're more of a cynical person, I can understand where this would be a downgrade for you. The government doesn't explain how they create the clones exactly, which I understand because cloning isn't totally a thing. You can't make a perfect clone of a human being, so attempting to explain it in a movie would just loosen its credibility in the first place. And also some other minor points, like the convenience of James hitting somebody instead of Gabby and Alban trying to get him into trouble, or James's wife Em agreeing to the clone before they even talked to James about it. Again, minor points, but if you're really honing in on the script, I can see how you'd pick up on these very easily. And again, much like Possessor, I think that Brandon Cronenberg has really figured out his storytelling techniques. It's a very slow-paced narrative with many scenes of almost existential dread and thought processes. A lot of scenes that don't quite make sense in the moment, but rather mesh to fit this sort of abstract picture that you get at the end of the film. I think the imagery of the masks that the so-called zombies James and his friends use to commit their crimes is a great piece of horror imagery. Each mask looks unique yet so similar, like they're part of a set with grotesque faces distorted in all different kinds of ways. It really turns itself into a memorable icon for the film. So yeah, the gore and the violence might not be for everybody, but to tell you the truth, I was soaking it up every second. This film did take a little bit of thought afterwards, so it might not be your easy Sunday afternoon watch. However, if you're sitting down for a more committed project and you're looking for something to shower yourself in blood, I'd say tackle Infinity Pool or Possessor, or any Cronenberg movie for that matter. They're both fantastic filmmakers, and I implore you to go check them out.